living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
If you're married, why did you get married? If you're not married and want to be, why do you want to get married? Hi there, I'm Dr. Carol, and this is Relationship Prescriptions. The reasons why people get married, we need to talk about that. Because if you go into marriage with a false presumption, false expectations, things are not going to go well. And I want to unpack that with you a bit today. I don't believe there is any area of life that makes a bigger impact on our well-being than the quality of our closest personal relationships, at least when it comes to, humanly speaking, our life on this earth. And for many, that means marriage. Why do people get married? Well, the standard or usual pathway that happens there, boy meets girl, you fall in love, you have all these beautiful feelings, and you expect those are going to continue, so let's just get married. Maybe it's a little more involved than that, hopefully. But the disappointment that comes if you get married for those kinds of reasons is universal. The fairy tales of living happily ever after is a myth. Ask anybody who's been married more than, maybe a week or two, and you will discover that the happily ever after is only a myth. It is only in fairy tales where that happens. Why do people get married, frankly? Have you thought about why you got married if you are, or why you want to be if you want to be married? Some of the reasons that lead people to get married is that feeling of being in love. And that's what that quotes in love is. It's a feeling. Now, the thing about feelings is that they are temporary. Every single feeling you have, every one, whether it's anger or sadness or grief or disappointment or excitement or feeling energetic or being in love, is temporary. Feelings change. All feelings change. And so if you get married based on feeling in love, that feeling is not a strong enough foundation to support a forever healthy marriage. There are other reasons why people get married, maybe for convenience, for financial reasons, to have children. There's the whole thing about sex. In our culture, you don't really have to be married to have sex. If you are a good Christian person, then you're supposed to get married if you want to have sex. But none of those are a good enough reason to create a foundation for a forever healthy marriage. If you are looking for someone to make you always feel wonderful, you're going to have to wait until heaven. No human being can withstand that kind of pressure. No human being is going to make you feel wonderful all the time. When many people say, I love you, sadly, what they often mean is, I love how I feel when I'm with you. That's not really love. Now, that's a beautiful feeling. And those beautiful feelings, we wouldn't be human if we never had them. And I believe that God created us with those kinds of attractions to someone, because we would probably never get married if we didn't have those kinds of feelings. And that was God's design for populating the earth. But that feeling alone is not enough. That sense of, I love how I feel when I'm with you, you are not always going to feel that way when you're with that person. There are no human beings that are able to make you feel that way all the time. So then people say, I just fell out of love. My feelings change. Yes, feelings always change. Every feeling is temporary. Now, there are also the realities that you married a sinner, and you did. Let's just accept the fact that you married a sinner. You married someone who doesn't understand your feelings, who doesn't even understand the things you say sometimes, who is selfish and doesn't meet your needs, who isn't as spiritual as you might like, who sometimes does things that hurt you. Yes, you married a sinner, and they should do things differently. But your spouse married a sinner too. You are a sinner just as much. And when two sinners marry, when two sinners set up living together, planning to live together for the rest of their lives, it's a setup for disaster. It's a wonder any marriages in our world last. Here's the thing about marriage. Marriage will rip the bandages off the wounds in your soul and expose the ugly. Marriage will expose your selfishness, your anger, your greediness, your self-centeredness, the way you refuse to be emotionally open, your withdrawal from intimacy, your contempt. Be married for a little while or a little longer, and those wounds will be, the bandages will be ripped off, and your ugly self will be exposed. A psychologist out of the University of Toronto, Dr. Jordan Peterson, talks about how if you are married, you have to solve problems. If you don't, you're miserable for 40 years or longer. That there will be problems come up, and you either run away and get divorced or you solve them. There are no other options. And in God's economy, the covenant of marriage means you're stuck there. And so therefore, you don't have any choice but to do the hard work of solving problems. There is probably no other reason that many people would find big enough that would push them to deal with their stuff. It's only when marriage rips the bandages off those wounds that you're finally exposed and in pain enough that you have to deal with your stuff. Now, I do want to pause and acknowledge that there are toxic marriages. We talked about this a few months ago with Dr. Gary Thomas, and his book, Toxic People, addresses this not only in marriage, but otherwise as well. There are times when a marriage is so destructive that the less painful, the less hurtful thing to do is for that marriage to end, and only God can clarify that with you. That's a big challenge, and I'm not saying that every marriage can always be saved, but it is true that marriage forces you to look at the stuff in your soul. If you refuse to, and only look at the stuff in your spouse's soul, you will remain miserable. You will remain stuck. So, again, why get married? If it's not only to have sex, if it's not to get all your needs met, if it's not to generate this happy feeling all the time, why? I believe that the only reason to truly get married is because it is a laboratory for learning to love well. As much as marriage can expose the damaged and evil parts of your soul, it is also a laboratory that God has designed for us in this world to learn to love well. Now, when my husband and Al and I got married, we were both mature. We had both learned a lot. And yet, getting married, there were things in my soul that being married brought to the surface. And God used that to show me things about myself that I don't know I would have had the impetus to deal with. I would have not had the emotional energy behind growth in those areas if I hadn't been forced to do that in being married. Learning to love well, it's kind of a rock bottom thing that Jesus wants all of us to do. Yeah, you can learn to love without being married. But there really is no better reason for marriage than learning to love well. And I believe in God's economy, that is what He is calling us to do. So don't get married to have your needs met, to have beautiful feelings all the time, or to have sex anytime you want. You will be disappointed. The reason to get married is because this is the person you want to grow old with, knowing that your and their feelings will change. And in that covenant, learning to love well. Now, thinking about learning to love well, I'm reminded of the old Beatles song, Love Is All You Need. And I don't believe that love is all you need. It's not. At least if what you mean by love is that butterflies and rainbows feeling you get in your stomach when you are close to someone, that feeling will change. And it's not a sappy, oh, I'm okay, you're okay, let's just all be happy. That's a very incomplete and inadequate understanding of love. God's kind of love is sacrificial, it's giving and action taking. That's a different story. But beyond feeling in love, I think there are at least 3 other categories of things you need in order to be successfully married. Love is not enough. So what else do you need? Number 1, you need skills. You did not come to marriageable age without baggage, and you did not learn all you needed to learn about life, about yourself, about people, about marriage, about God. And you certainly didn't develop all the skills that you need for a successful marriage. You do need to develop the skills that will allow you to develop a healthy relationship. You know, it's often been said that we spend more time preparing for a career that's going to last a short time. We spend more time shopping for a car often than we do preparing to get married. Now, that's not always the case, but it often is. There are skills that are necessary. Even in the Christian context, pre-marriage counseling is often limited to, okay, are you both believers? All right. Then talk to each other, have sex, and pray. That usually is about as deep as most pre-marriage counseling goes. Now, is there benefit in that? Sure. And perhaps people that are in all the emotional flurry of feeling in love, moving toward getting married, perhaps that's as much as they are able to take in. But the skills you really need are much broader than that. You learned, for example, you learned how to communicate before you knew you were learning it. You learned about intimacy. You learned how men and women relate to each other and to the world. You learned about handling conflict. Now, if the way you communicate, do intimacy, handle conflict, and deal with male and female roles, just for starters, if the way you do those things is not serving you well in your marriage or your relationships now, you can learn new skills. That's the thing about skills. You can learn. You don't have to stay in the same state that you were. When you start learning any skill, it's uncomfortable. You don't know how to do it very well. And you do it clumsily. And you may, quotes, fail. It takes practice. Same thing with these kinds of skills. you can learn them. The second thing you need for a successful marriage, besides love, is a right mindset. If you go into marriage, or if you develop a mindset that says, my marriage is for me, that my spouse is supposed to make me happy, you will be disappointed. An absolute setup for disaster. A mindset of learning to love well doesn't come easily. That often takes the crucible of marriage to develop. So when you are wrestling with struggles in your marriage, a couple questions that I think you can thoughtfully and prayerfully consider that will help you get in a healthier mindset. One of those questions is, God, who do you need me to be to my spouse in this season? Sometimes God needs you to take your grubby hands off so that he has a chance to work. Sometimes God may need you to set some boundaries. Sometimes God may need you to do some hard work in your own soul and change your own behavior. Sometimes God may need you to wait and persist. Whatever it is, God, who do you need me to be to my spouse in this season? And then a second follow-up question, God, show me how you see us. Show me your perspective on my heart, on my spouse's heart, on our marriage. God's perspective may dramatically change your perspective of your marriage. Now, it is true that it's unlikely you will see the whole picture in completeness as God does. But if you spend some quiet time in God's presence, asking for his perspective, that can make a huge difference. For example, if your spouse is behaving badly, it makes a difference whether your spouse is acting out of an evil heart, choosing to cause pain and destruction, or whether your spouse is acting out of their brokenness. Now, there may be some crossover there, but God's perspective will be very helpful in helping you keep the right mindset. So when it comes to mindset, those two questions, God, who do you need me to be to my spouse in this season? And second, what is your perspective on our relationship, on my heart and on my spouse's heart? And then the third thing that you need besides love is outside people fuel. You are not married in a vacuum. The past history that both you and your spouse have brought to your marriage impacts you. And God did not design you as an individual, and he did not design your marriage to grow and thrive in isolation. He designed you to grow and thrive, including in your marriage, in community. Your marriage is very likely to be a reflection of the other marriages that you spend the most time around. Look at the 3, 4, 5 other couples that you hang out with the most, especially those marriages that are a few years down the road from yours, who have been married 5 years, 10 years longer than you have been. Do you like what you see? If you don't, it's time to get around some other healthier marriages. Intentionally look for couples that are displaying things in their marriage that you need and desire. And just watch them. If you can, talk with them. Find out how they do it. No marriage is perfect. And as you talk with couples, you'll start to see how they learned to overcome some of the hardships that all marriages encounter. Look for some couples a little bit farther ahead and find out how they did it. So there you are. Why get married? It's not enough to get married because you're in love, for sex, or just for convenience. The only reason to get married that is weighty enough to sustain you over the long haul is learning to love well. And beyond that loving feeling, you need at least 3 categories of things. You need skills. Thankfully, you can develop skills. You need a right mindset. Asking God who He needs you to be in this season and to show you His perspective on your marriage will help you with that mindset. And third, you need outside people fuel, other couples farther ahead who have overcome some of the same challenges that you're experiencing that you can learn from. One of the places that I would invite you to come learn from some of those couples is in our online community, the Fully Alive Group, fullyalivegroup.com. If you come there, you can request some samples of the kinds of resources we make available in our community, full-length video sessions that we have every Tuesday evening, some downloadable tip sheets. This month, the month of February, we're focusing on relationships. Now, that's not a surprise. This month is Valentine's Day coming up. And so we're talking about love. We're talking about that both from the standpoint of singleness and marriage. We're talking about what learning to love well looks like and how you can do that. We're unpacking some of the practical steps that you can take in learning to love well, whether you're married or single. If you are not married right now, taking some steps in learning to love well can make you so much more available for a healthy relationship, should you desire to get married. And if you are married, taking the steps in learning to love well will very much change your marriage for the better. I'd invite you to come over and check that out, fullyalivegroup.com, and request those free resources. I also love hearing from you. If you have a question or a comment about this or any of our programs, you can send me a confidential comment or question, drcarolministries.com/podcast, and I read everyone personally and I'll respond. And thank you for being part of our podcast family. I pray for you often. And until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.